We left Roseburg on Tuesday, the day after Labor Day, stopping in Hood River for a delicious lunch with Irene, Gary, and Adrian. They had prepared salad and sandwiches made from some of Adrian's homemade bread and a large helping of Irene's famous flan for dessert. After a short visit, we continued on and finally pulled over for the night at a rest area near Sprague Lake. We got there so late that we almost missed out on having a space to park for the night. We awoke early to the sound of idling big rigs and a beautiful sunrise. Yesterday, we drove almost 490 miles. Today, we would drive about 350 more to Lewis and Clark Caverns State Park, just south of Butte, Montana. Along the way, we had to stop to have our kayaks inspected for invasive species. Then took a lunch break at a rest area not far from the Idaho-Montana border. It was perfect driving weather, and we enjoyed the beautiful scenery along the Clark Fork River into Missoula. We arrived at the park by late afternoon. Linda had reserved us a space in the campground there alongside the Jefferson River. Leaving the trailer in camp, we drove the 3 miles up the mountain to the caverns. Linda bought our tickets for the Paradise Tour, which is shorter and easier, designed for small children and the infirm. We had time to kill, so on the recommendation of our camp host, we had breakfast at the cafe and gift shop. Our tour started with a short, easy walk to the cave entrance. There were 23 of us in our group. Our guide was a local and was quite entertaining. He gave us the history of the caverns, told us stories about this area that he grew up in. Apparently, Chet Huntley, the newscaster, lived not far from him, and their two families were well acquainted. After the tour, we readied our trailer for the day's drive. Just before pulling out, Linda stubbed her toe on a bathroom door frame. Badly. I guess you could say, on its way to market, her little piggy got T-boned by a Mack truck and went wee 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 all the way home. As I'm recording this, nearly 3 weeks after the fact, she's still favoring her sore foot. On the way through Helena, we strolled and hobbled through Last Chance Gulch for an hour or so, looking around in the curio shops. We pulled into Placid Lake around 4 o'clock. We had no electric hookups here, so I grilled us a couple of hot dogs for dinner. Then we took a walk down by the water with our cameras. Day 4 found us driving a few miles north of Seeley Lake and into the woods to the trailhead to Morrell Falls. It's a relatively easy hike, if you haven't stubbed your toe recently, through about 2.5 miles of mostly burnt-out forest and back again. We passed by a couple of mountain lakes, always on the lookout for bears who might want their pictures taken. We didn't see any bears, but we were able to capture some flora and fauna with our cameras. The falls are very nice and were well worth the hike in. Day 5 would have us driving north from Placid Lake to Columbia Falls up near Glacier National Park. Along the way, we stopped for a couple of hours at Swan Lake, and I finally got my kayak wet. I paddled around and admired some of the beautiful homes that had been built by the other half.
Maybe after our ship comes in, Linda and I will be able to afford a nice little vacation home like this.
I paddled back to the boat ramp, dutifully rinsed off my kayak, ate a sandwich, and drove on to Wayfarer State Park, where we expected to spend the next night. The only space they had left didn't turn out to be our cup of tea, so Linda made some hasty calls to Columbia Falls RV Park, where she had made arrangements for the following night, and asked if they wouldn't accommodate us a day early. Now this is what I call an urban campground. It had very nice showers, full hookups, where we could recharge our batteries and dump our tanks. It's a short drive to the park entrance, and walking distance to stores selling groceries, liquor, and gifts, and the historic downtown area. After getting set up at the RV park, we drove around town and discovered the Gun Sight Saloon. There, we relaxed with an adult beverage, listened to some local talent, and decided we might just have to have burgers here before we leave town. This is Whitefish, Montana, a mecca for outdoor enthusiasts year-round with all kinds of activities for the physically fit, from biking and hiking to floating and boating. During the winter, there's skiing, snowboarding, with trails for cross-country, snowshoers, and snow machines. I'm sure they have a vibrant nightlife, if the number of brew pubs found along the streets is any indication. One such establishment, called the Black Star, looked so inviting, we popped in and ordered a pizza. I like pizza. September 11th, a day that will live in infamy. Also, the first day to get into Glacier National Park without having to purchase a permit. Our plan was to drive to Logan Pass, the summit of the Continental Divide and the top of Going to the Sun Road. Just a few miles into the park, we ran out of pavement and began a 9-mile stretch of mud, potholes, and washboard at 30 miles per hour, bumper to bumper. We didn't see much construction going on. Instead, every pullout with a view of McDonald Lake was taken up with heavy equipment just sitting idle. The road itself was nothing short of an engineering marvel. From Wikipedia, I read, "Going to the Sun Road is the only road that traverses the park. Construction began in 1921 and was completed 11 years later. The 2-lane road is quite narrow and winding, with hairpin turns, especially west of Logan Pass. Vehicle lengths are limited to no more than 21 feet, and widths no more than 8 feet. Vehicles over 10 feet in height may not have enough clearance due to rock overhangs. The speed limit is 25 miles per hour in the steep and winding alpine sections." Linda knew her life was in my hands as she tried not to look over the edge, separated from certain death only by my driving skills and a mere rock wall no more than 3 feet high. With her frequent and timely utterances, I believe she did a better job expressing the essence of the road than the contributors to Wikipedia. I see your face right now, but I don't dare look away from the road.
No, just close as slow as you can. Even look around, honey. Just keep your eyes straight on the road.
Yes, dear. I was tempted to open my window and fold in my mirror to avoid having it sideswiped by a passing vehicle, if it weren't for the fact that I'd have to drive with one hand and take my eyes off the road briefly.
I can't even look.
Linda would have never forgiven me for that. As we rounded a corner, I could see cars stopped in both directions up ahead, and I thought, oh no, someone broke down or had a collision and had nowhere to pull off. But I was wrong. A black bear had wandered across the road and stopped traffic. Folks were snapping pictures like crazy. Thankfully, I had my camera handy. Some motorist behind me got impatient and tooted his horn, so we continued onward and upward. The bear sighting was a welcome distraction for Linda, but it wasn't long before the dire predicament she found herself in was once again invading her thoughts. I'll speed up the video here. The views are spectacular from up here. We were able to see remains of melting glaciers, U-shaped glacial valleys, and awe-inspiring rock formations and landscapes. We luckily found a parking space, and Linda browsed the gift shop as I walked around a bit. We then headed back down the way we had come.
I missed it.
I can see if I can turn around here in the middle of
That's
this
all
road.
right. No, that's okay.
Alright.
I bought a postcard, I think, of that wall, so I'm good. I bought a lot of postcards. I pretty much covered this whole park, so I could technically stay in the damn camper for the next 2 days.
Luckily, I found a parking space, and we took a mile-long walk through a cedar forest. We left real early this morning to drive to Many Glacier Hotel, and were thrilled to see a moose cross the road right in front of us. We weren't quite camera ready yet.
Missed it.
The scenery on our way to Bab and the turnoff to Swift Current Lake was stunning, especially this time of day. We were hoping to get standby tickets to the boat ride across Swift Current Lake to the trailhead to Grinnell Lake, but there were none to be had. Reservations have to be made weeks in advance to secure passage, but there's no way we could have predicted the day and time that far in advance. drive eastward up going to the Sun Road is not nearly as harrowing as the western route, and although there were many turnouts with spectacular views, parking spaces were rare. We were able to stop at a few and get some good photos of the glaciers. Taking one of these tour buses through the park is an option, but doesn't afford one the measure of freedom that we enjoy. I suspect that someday soon this may be the only option at Glacier, as it is at many other popular national parks. We got back in town around lunchtime and decided to drive out to a fishing pond we'd heard about. There, a class of high schoolers were on a field trip and were practicing their fly fishing techniques. They weren't nearly as successful as this osprey. On our way back, we stopped at this distillery for a flight of locally made spirits. I ended up buying a bottle of huckleberry cream liqueur for medicinal purposes only. That evening, we finally got our sandwiches at the Gunsight Saloon. Linda ordered a burger and I the pulled pork. Day 9 was a day of travel. South along the shores of Flathead Lake, then southwest to Highway 90 and out of Montana. Lots of pretty country through here. We stopped for a while at Wallace, Idaho, and walked up and down the main drag. There was a bicycle tour group in town who had been riding on the Rails to Trails route that stretches all the way from Coeur d'Alene. Next stop was Kellogg for the huckleberry milkshakes we'd been craving all week. And then on to Kingston and Albert's Landing RV Park for the night. This shoe tree had a lot of ripe fruit on it. It's a pretty place around here, and the owners seem to be quite proud of it. We paid more for a space here than anywhere else we'd been on our trip. Day 10. Another long day of driving. This time all the way from Kingston, Idaho to Melaleuce State Park on the Columbia Gorge. This would be our last night on the road, and we turned in early. We wanted to be home by 10 a.m. the next day to visit with Miles for a while before he had to drive back to Newburgh. He was kind enough to stay with the dogs at our house while we were away. We wanted to get up and on the road by 5:30 if we could. Montana and Idaho have some of the most breathtaking natural scenery in the country, but I have to say Oregon is right up there with them. We are so blessed to live in such a beautiful state. That night, I gave thanks for our safe travels, albeit with a minor hitch or two along the way, but for the most part, a fun, stress-free vacation. I was to find out that I had counted my blessings just a bit too soon. Entering Portland on I-84, just before rush hour traffic, we had a blowout on the trailer. I don't have a death wish, so I called for roadside assistance. An hour later, a brave soul driving a Honda Civic pulled up and set about changing the wheel as cars and trucks sped by just a few feet from him at 65+ miles per hour.